What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Glasshouse, an upcoming narrative CRPG kind of in the vein of things like Disco Elysium, but also taking inspiration from titles like Pathologic as well. But first, a bit of important context. So, I'm bringing you this video via an open playtest of this game over on Steam, meaning that if you'd like to check out what I'm about to talk about here, you can just go to their Steam page, request access, and it should be granted to you immediately, and this playtest is running through December 7th. Now, this game has been in progress for a few years now, that is to say in development, from a small team known as Flat 28. Now, this is not the first time I had personally heard of this game. I believe they even emailed me at one point, but I was waiting on something a little more concrete before covering it. And so, while this is a playtest that you can actually play for yourself, just given the nature of the team and everything, how long this has been working on, I would not expect this to be coming in the near future in probably any capacity, but it's doing some interesting things that I thought were worth talking about, which is why I wanted to go ahead and cover it. Namely, one of the things that sets this apart from a game like Disco Elysium is things like the actual turn-based combat that, while is actually combat in some sense, also actually incorporates the option to do things like talk enemies down, and even outside of these battles, it features a pretty robust dialogue system as you would want from a game like this. But that's only some of the interesting parts about this game, because what is much more, I would say, prevalent to me at least, is that the game has a very unique setting in the sense that it's what they're coining as feudal punk, or to be a little more specific, it has spent the last 200 years operating as a feudal system to the great expense of, technological progress. But that was about 200 years ago, and now, here at the time of this game, another conflict is about to set off, seemingly a gigantic world war that's about to take place, and while that's going on in the background, we have a more immediate problem of being trapped in our sort of apartment complex for about 2 months, give or take, when suddenly a triple homicide occurs, and it's your job, seemingly as like the building superintendent, to get to the bottom of whatever happened here. And given that you're locked in this apartment complex with all of these people, your job is to effectively use your skills and abilities to investigate and get to the bottom of everything going around here, which is going to lead to you uncovering some unsavory details about all of the, let's say, interesting neighbors you have. Now, in order to do that, we of course have to lean on some systems of some sort or another, and in this game, it's known as your political class. So, with this feudal structure the game has, it has a whole bunch of, I would say, very specific and in some cases conflicting political ideologies that are at the forefront of it, and your skill points that you're going to assign to these individual ideologies are known as your point of view points, but basically putting points into each of these, or anarchy, which will sort of raise on its own with your lowest stat, is what is going to determine things like your overall dialogue options, skill checks, things like that. And speaking of those skill checks, those specifically do seem to be like a hard pass or fail thing. You either have the skill or you don't, as opposed to a dice roll, whereas in combat, that's where the actual dice rolls come in. Looks to be just a simple D6 system. But they do mention that trying to sort of mix and match these might lead to a sort of problem that they describe as setting off a storm of some sort, but over this playtest, roughly like 45 minutes to an hour runtime, you obviously don't get too much of an idea of how that works, but you will get to grips with our main character, Wield is his name, and we'll seemingly discover bits of our own background as we go, and see exactly what is haunting this person whose political ideology we have sort of set for our own at the very least, which I'm a little curious about because as certain stat spreads seem to assign like a job of some sort to your character, and I'm curious if that plays into it at all. But either way, gameplay that you can see on screen here is relatively simple, pretty par for the course for isometric type of stuff. You'll be able to walk up to and interact with a bunch of different items, which typically opens up what they're calling the interaction tab, which is where most of the dialogue comes in, where a lot of it is actually intended to be presented as a play to you, which is why the narrator is meant to be like this director character and all the voices in your head are known as the choir. But for the stuff that is not like hard pass or fail, some of them do actually come with like little mini games. I would imagine in an effort to keep you a little bit more engaged than just reading it. But moving on a little bit, let's talk about combat in particular. So combat is technically speaking turn-based, as I mentioned, but your three options are basically to try to talk an enemy down, which, if you can strike the right chords, as they call it, leads to the potential for lowering their threat bar, which is when you you can sort of force them to stand down, so to speak, through your abilities, or you can take the more obvious option, which is naturally violence. So you can, of course, just roll to attack. You can either use your fists or any weapon you can maybe use from your items and inventory before rolling that d6 to see what you do damage-wise. Now, when the enemy attacks you, at least for the sake of this demo, you have the potential opportunity to counter it if you can hit, again, a little minigame correctly, giving you some different options to move through, let's say, more hostile encounters. But I did mention using items from your inventory, so let's talk a bit about that for a moment. So there will be a proper crafting system. You can gain knowledge of crafting by reading, which is also, of course, going to give you some of the background on the sort of setting that we find ourselves in. But what was more interesting to me was mention of a system known as cunning. Basically, there are hidden dialogue options that are only unlocked if you have the appropriate inventory items in your inventory at the time in which those conversations take place. And I'd be curious over the course of a full game just how involved that particular mechanic ultimately feels. But tying all of that together, I think you kind of get the point of what Glasshouse here is going for. And overall, I enjoy the aesthetic, what they're trying to do. The setting strikes me as particularly interesting. And while I, just to reiterate, do not expect this game to be coming out anytime soon, I did think it would be fun to talk about and hopefully give it a little more visibility, as I imagine it's probably not a game a ton of people have heard of. And so, with any luck, you enjoyed all of that. But by all means, tell me how you actually felt about it down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.